This video is sponsored by Ground News. More from them in a bit. About 2 years ago, I made this video called AI Art is Inevitable. See, at the time, AI generated images were starting to look way better than they had just a few years before. What was once odd-looking shapes and blobs was now actual things. And I was concerned. I did not like this for multiple reasons. Not only was this stuff generated by using the creations of artists without their permission, without compensation, but the very nature of AI art seemed to devalue human-made art by its very existence. It seemed like a cheap imitation, which it was. And while at the time, AI art wasn't perfect, it was clearly improving, getting better year over year. I speculated that within a few decades, when the technology was perfected, it could result in a major shift in how future generations would define art. I mean, imagine a world where people never need to learn to write a song, to play an instrument, to draw a picture, or make a movie. They would never need to understand the fine details in what made a work of art good. Instead, they would rely on simple prompts in the AI that contained all previous human-made works. I mean, why would somebody spend tens of thousands of hours learning how to do art when they could just go onto a website that produces roughly the same thing instantaneously? Time equals money. And surely corporations would be looking at this kind of stuff as a new, innovative way to save money, cut jobs, and please their shareholders in the process. I ended this video talking about how, in my opinion, this seemed to be the beginning of the end for art, the death of art, at least as I would define it. I felt that AI art was something that would not only ruin careers, but even just art as a hobby, as a thing. And I felt that we were witnessing the start of some horrific dystopia. Now it's been, like I said, almost 2 years, and I wanted to revisit this topic and see, was I right? Was AI art inevitable? Not really, it turns out. Okay, so obviously AI continued to get better. AI art got better way faster than I could have possibly expected. At this point, most of the internet is flooded with AI-generated slop. Entire industries have gone on strike in fear that these technologies will take jobs, and the market cap of corporations like Nvidia have reached trillions of dollars due to this AI hype machine. This is a big deal, even if it is, in my opinion, just a giant bubble. But even still, after all of this, after all these advancements in the technology, as far as I'm concerned, the only practical use for generative AI art is the same as it was 2 years ago. Shitposts, memes. Yeah, companies have tried to make television ads using AI and it didn't end well. It looks disgusting. And while AI-generated images have gotten better, we've also become a lot better at identifying what AI-generated material is, because it's so commonplace. I mean, this stuff once appeared photorealistic to the untrained eye, and now most people can tell something is clearly off about it. It's uncanny, not quite right. And that makes sense, because it turns out removing the human element from art, relying on a compilation of all previously created works mashed together in a mathematical algorithm, ultimately does create something inhuman, or even worse, generic. Okay, like I've said many times before, I'm not entirely sold on the benefits of LLM AI technology, for the average consumer at least. And a lot of that is because most big tech companies don't really seem to know or care what the average consumer wants. Like, take a look at this story about how Meta recently announced it would start introducing AI-generated accounts onto Facebook. AI accounts posting AI-generated material solely for the purpose of boosting engagement by real people. That is horrifying in so many different ways, and I found out about it thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Ground News. Ground News allows you to see at a glance the biggest news stories of the day, and quickly compare headlines and takes by different organizations depending on their political leaning and reliability. You can quickly see who owns a news organization, which often does affect how news gets covered. One of my favorite features is the blind spot, which shows you stories that one side or the other just doesn't cover. Even when it comes to covering technology stories, you can see political bias at play. Like, for example, on that Facebook story, more left-leaning sources seem to be inputting their opinions about Meta as a corporation, and in the center, you might see more mentions of stuff like the dead internet theory. So if you want to get both sides of the story, Ground News is giving my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. The link is in the description. So you might remember back in early 2024, the company OpenAI was showing off its Sora video generator. The demos that OpenAI were showing off for Sora were not perfect, but this was a huge leap over the existing AI video generators. You know, rather than just making simple pictures, you could make movies, little short clips, or at least a few seconds of something moving in a semi-realistic manner. After months of this product being delayed, it finally released, but you'd be forgiven for forgetting about all of this. AI hype has died down. Turns out beyond very specific use cases, most people did not care. Sora AI isn't quite as impressive as it was a few months ago, not just because other companies are doing roughly the same thing, but also the demos that OpenAI chose to show off in the initial reveal were, as you'd expect, the absolute best case scenario when it came to the service's capabilities. Like, hey, if you type in a lighthouse overlooking the ocean, what you'll be presented with is something that looks nearly indistinguishable from the real thing. And that makes sense. I mean, after all, this is likely using the entire internet to train its data, copyrighted material and all. Okay, before I continue, I can't really prove that point. There was an ex-OpenAI engineer who whistleblew about the company using copyrighted data, but that guy suspiciously unalived himself after being named to appear in court where he could prove this information that, if true, would likely cause OpenAI to have a lot of major legal hurdles. Possibly could have put an end to the entire company because it would prove they were just stealing from everybody. But since he was one of the only people who seemed to have proof, and now after returning home from a trip with his family, who said he seemed, you know, fine and normal and well, and now he unalived himself, I guess OpenAI doesn't have to worry about any of that. Amazing how all these whistleblowers, essential to major court cases against corporations, are no longer able to testify in court as soon as they need to appear in court. So yeah, while normally I would discuss how OpenAI's acquisition of all this training data is potentially legally dubious, I enjoy living, so I'm just going to ignore that. As for Sora, it's about what you'd expect. There are some decent results. The tech still seems pretty impressive if I only show you a small fraction of what I actually generated. Yeah, most of what this stuff makes is garbage. Here's a fish trying to climb a tree. Enthralling. Big surprise, Sora wasn't all it was hyped up to be. It's still 99% garbage, 1% decent outputs, just like the rest of AI. But this alone wouldn't warrant dismissing AI art as the inevitable future. It's possible that this slop could permeate all consumer industries in just a few years. The technology will still get better, the rate of success will get higher. But now that we have access to a technology like Sora that is so good, so sufficient to create art in some ways, while also being so awful in others, I think this actually starts to show us more of the fundamental flaws with generative AI art as a concept. Problems that I'm convinced can never be solved. Okay, so I've never really had much faith in AI's ability to generate entire artistic works through just text prompts. But since this AI isn't actually creating art and it's only able to draw from what it knows, that being reference material containing all human-made art, it makes sense that if you only type in a few words, the output is gonna be pretty generic. I know some AI art defenders say how this shouldn't be a problem because all human-made art is still just inspired by other art, and this AI is just doing the same thing with training data. But to me, this is a bizarre argument. I mean, whether or not you believe that all human art is simply derivative of previous works, you have to admit that there was a spark of originality at some point down the line. AI is not capable of that. It can only draw from previous works. So yeah, of course it's going to be generic. It has to be generic because it can't be wholly original. I've already discussed in a previous video why AI-generated art through text is probably never going to take over the industry in a meaningful way. You might have heard the saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but that's not really true. A picture is worth a lot more than 1,000 words. Even in ideal circumstances, something like a simple JPEG can be worth 300,000 bytes, which is kind of like 300,000 words, and that's a lot of words. Some people have tried their hand at creating short films with generative AI, and in my opinion, it never goes well. These shorts from TCL Studios show the problems off really well. I mean, they're each only like 5 minutes long or so, but every one of these shorts feels like nothing more than a compilation of 5-second clips clearly generated by AI. There's no consistency in the art style. Feels like every shot is directed by a different person. Feels like the actors change throughout. None of it is cohesive because the AI isn't capable of cohesion. I felt that maybe Sora would be able to fix this, because this is a major consumer product from OpenAI that is releasing at a time when they absolutely need to regain relevance from an increasingly apathetic consumer base. So I did a few tests. First of all, I wanted to see if Sora could take an existing video and perfectly alter it. So I have this video of this cat right here, and I wanted Sora to turn this cat into a plush stuffed animal. And it did it, kind of. I mean, it understood that this was the cat, but it couldn't match the movements of the original footage. If I asked Sora to stop moving the cat's head so much, it would respond by growing additional eyes on the back of said cat's head. By choosing to do a more subtle remix of this video, I could get something pretty similar to the original footage. But for some reason, the AI felt the need to change the blanket that the cat was sitting on. This is a consistent theme with AI. It seems to just try and fill in its own details that I don't want or need. So I tried this experiment again, but with a more simple video clip. This guy turning around, standing in front of a green screen. As many of you probably know, replacing a green screen in video editing software is about the easiest thing you can do. You just, key out that green screen, plop in something, and I wanted this AI to replace the green screen with a winter wonderland. This should have been simple. It really should have been simple. No matter what I tried though, the AI would either reconstruct the subject, the person, the actor, making them look like a blurry mess, and it never seemed to be able to get rid of that green screen. It would just put stuff on top of it. And to me, this confirms that for all the progress, all the advancements, the fact that this AI is getting better, it still can't overcome those greatest obstacles: control and continuity. And this makes sense. By its very nature, what I'm describing here, the idea of control and continuity, it kind of goes against what generative AI art is trying to achieve. The AI makes images and videos easier to produce, but at the inherent cost of control. And even if this problem was solved through some video editing tools, there'd still be the problems of consistency, allowing people to reuse the same assets, to keyframe, control the motion and movements of characters on screen. The only way to solve this would be to, create points of data in a 3D space, which is, that's just CGI. And I think that AI could probably do this. We've seen early stages of this stuff happening, but you'll start to notice that the more control you have over a program, the less time you save. AI is inherently about giving up that control, and art requires control. Even in the best case scenario, the inconsistencies of this AI technology, the flaws of generated models, will still need to be touched up by 3D modeling experts. You'll still need to keyframe animations, and the amount of time saved will be minimal at best. All the while, the program itself will probably cost a lot of money. These large language models are consuming so much data, they are using so much power, costing so much money to run, and clearly none of this is sustainable. I mean, there's a reason that OpenAI was bordering on bankruptcy. There's a reason Microsoft just keeps throwing more money at it, because it can't make money itself. There's a reason why OpenAI is now charging $200 a month for its top tier, and these prices will probably continue to go up. Obviously, generative AI art and the AI industry are intrinsically linked, and I am extremely skeptical about the future of AI. I think it's a little too convenient that the moment that AI starts to fall out of favor with the general public, that as soon as this technology seems to plateau and stop advancing so quickly, OpenAI is ready to declare that it has new incredible benchmarks, possibly achieving AGI, while not really having a lot of definitive proof of any of this. Yes, shocking that the company that once asked for trillions of dollars in investment might not be the most reliable source in the world. But as this stuff gets more and more expensive, as the hype continues to fade away and investors demand that these products actually start to make money, these costs will increase. And if the primary benefit of generative AI is that it saves time, which saves money, and it no longer saves money, what's the point of it? Well, not a lot. I do think that generative AI will have a future in art to some capacity, but a limited capacity. We already see video games use procedural generation. This has been going on for a long time. And I'm sure that generative AI could improve upon the barren landscapes of Starfield. Is it as good as handcrafted worlds? Probably not. But for developers that are focused on scale above everything else, yeah, I'm sure they'll find value in this technology. But with that said, I don't think any of this is ideal for short films or TV shows. Honestly, I'm starting to think that this is just a really fancy replacement for stock footage. Okay, so if you watch YouTube frequently enough, you've noticed a lot of stock footage. You know, all these videos that kind of look professional, that appear on every video essay. You know, these are just short clips that can be used to convey a point. These clips can't be combined to make some compelling masterpiece because, you know, it's just short videos, but they still have value. And I think generative AI art could have this value. Just more stock footage. Billions and trillions of dollars spent on stock footage. This still isn't ideal, you know. I still don't like AI art. I'm seeing more and more AI generated assets appear. And it's not that I'm just inherently against AI because of a moral crusade, although I do think that using this training data without artist permission is wrong. Really, I just think it's ugly. There's a reason why people laugh at the Coke AI ad, because it's just bad. It looks bad. It looks uncanny. But in the future, if this stuff gets better and the prices don't become unreasonable, yeah, I'm sure this could replace stock footage. But even still, I don't think most people are going to call this art, because people don't call stock footage art. It's a product and little more. And I think that's what generative AI is destined to be. Once all the controversies cool down surrounding the technology and younger generations embrace this as the new norm because of its convenience, it's not going to change the fact that for most people, for most professionals, it's just not that useful. Artists have already spent decades crafting more efficient ways to create art using computers. And it seems like Silicon Valley just doesn't understand that. The more advancements that are made in this field, the more it becomes apparent that AI art isn't moving in a direction that makes it useful for professionals. At this point, I've seen a lot of people actually complain about the use of AI art in situations that AI art isn't likely even being used. And look, maybe I'm underestimating this, maybe I am wrong, but I don't know. I just feel like after all this time, you would have seen more clear benefits to this technology than just, I don't know, a better way to make shit posts. Because still, after 2 years, that's all it's really good for. So was that it then? Was AI art just a gimmick, a cheap promise of a future that could never really happen? Well, yeah, kind of. It would be silly for me to say that AI has no future in art whatsoever beyond just being stock footage. And while I'm not convinced that companies like OpenAI will deliver genuine value in art, like I don't think that typing in some words and getting a short video will ever be anything more than a gimmick. That doesn't mean that other similar technologies won't make some impact. There have been some demos from companies like Nvidia that show off the ability to create 3D models from nothing but text. Yes, the output is kind of generic, but at least the models they're creating have polygons. This is in and of itself not all that compelling to me. I mean, this stuff is always going to be kind of generic, right? If it's just made from text. But also, it seems as though these tools have the ability to create 3D models from images. This is far more interesting. While it would still require quite a bit of work to draw a picture, especially from several different angles, and you would definitely need a 3D artist to still touch all of this up, since this can create polygons, it can work in more traditional 3D CGI environments. There is a form of AI in art that has value, but it's probably not the kind of AI that companies are looking for, and it's not the value that companies are looking for. Tools that can save time for artists and not just money for companies. My fear, and many others' fear, was that this technology would become good enough to approximate art with virtually no human input. The outputs could be generic and people would just accept this as entertainment. But it seems like so much of the AI art industry, or at least the most popular tools involved in this industry, aren't really moving in a direction that professionals would find all that valuable. And even this version of AI art, an infinitely more valuable tool than the generative garbage we've seen so much of, in the hands of people who already know how to 3D model and animate, this could save a lot of time in an industry that notoriously has never been given a lot of time to work. Hopefully. This isn't to say that anybody in these fields should ever get complacent. I mean, nobody wants to lose their jobs to the robots, and the companies are constantly trying to look to cut jobs. But I think after years of seeing what this existential threat to art has to offer, I am confident, or fairly confident, in saying it probably isn't an existential threat to art. Not because people will just accept it as art, or because it's just a new tool. No, I think that it's not that good. A good tool allows you to achieve what you want to achieve faster. This stuff, this prompting stuff, it's just trying to approximate what you want to achieve while never actually achieving it. Control will always require time and skill. You can make the process of creating art quicker, and you can lower the skill ceiling. And we've seen this many times before in the digital art age. But if you try and remove all the skill and all the time from the artistic process, you're left with something that isn't art. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic, but I hope that going forward, companies that try this AI art stuff keep that in mind. Or maybe I'm completely wrong and Disney will make the 7th Avenger movie entirely out of clips from Sora. Once again, huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. I really love the work they're doing over there, and if you want to get both sides of the story, Ground News is giving my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. Link is in the description.